How are you?
I'm good, all right. Well, thank you very much to Commissioner Roy Brooks and Senator Brother Alpert and all. I'm joined today, I must acknowledge our national board member, Lamel McMorris of National Action Network, and head of our Washington Bureau, and really does a lot more than that, Ebony Riley, as well as others that are joining us. Kara, or everybody that is with us. I'm very happy to be here, and I think that your gathering takes on different meaning in this age of this administration and its challenges to our community. Just in the last several days, I spent time in Tallahassee, Florida around voting rights issues, and night before last was in Mobile, Alabama, where a young black female had asked why she was being charged for utensils at the Waffle House. They'd ordered some food, and they said you have to pay 50 cents for the knife and 50 cents for the fork. And she asked why, and the manager got irate, and she asked for their corporate headquarters number, and they called the police, and the police came in and dragged her to where the top of her clothing exposed her breasts, and dragged her, and someone videoed it and sent it out. So we went down to Mobile to deal with that. I raise all of that to say that we are in a climate, whether it is Starbucks in Philly, whether it is this young lady in Mobile, Alabama, whether it's 4 women, black women, trying to golf in Pennsylvania, they are all representative of a shift in this country. And you are in a critical position on the ground to have to deal with this shift. If we look at American history, we will find that every time there was a step forward, there always was a backlash to push us back. In the mid-19th century, when there was the abolitionist movement to end chattel slavery, after they could not win against the Confederates, the Union couldn't win, they convinced Abraham Lincoln that if he allowed them to enlist who were then the enslaved, they could then have enough manpower to defeat the Confederates. And Lincoln, who's given credit in history for just wanting to free the slave, Lincoln didn't fall in love with us. Lincoln was trying to save the Union. And in saving the Union, he allowed them to enlist blacks. Blacks fought, and the deal was that if they fought and saved the Union, that they would be freed in slave states. What a lot of us don't understand is Lincoln never agreed they would free all the slaves. There were slaves up north. But those in the slave states were freed, saved the Union, and given the right to vote. Immediately we started voting. There was over 22 blacks put in Congress, and there was a backlash. The backlash is when the Ku Klux Klan started, White Citizens Council started. What was a real threat, though, was not those in the white sheets and the white hoods. It was those in the black robes right down the road here at the Supreme Court that came with Plessy versus Ferguson and other decisions that was the backlash to what Lincoln and others had done during the Battle of Emancipation. And if you go all the way through history since then, it was all the ways that. Well, We went through 8 years of a black president with a black family in the White House. He moved his mother-in-law in. A cultural shock to America to look up every day and see a black family, wholesome family, living in the White House. If we thought there was not going to be a backlash to that, then we were not students of history.
Yes, sir.
Because all of us that have been engaged in this struggle for a while assumed there would be a backlash. In fact, they tried to block him every step of the way.
Yes.
Anytime you have people fighting against their own mama getting health care, you're dealing with extreme hate. They would poll people saying, are you for the Affordable Care Act? Yes. Are you for Obamacare? No, not knowing the same thing. So anytime somebody would vote against their mama, you're dealing with an element of backlash. Now, I did not know the backlash would manifest in the election of Donald Trump.
Well,
but that was the ultimate backlash. And his pronounced agenda is to undo everything President Obama said to do.
yeah.
So you wake up this morning, you had many blacks that said Obama didn't do nothing. Well, if Obama didn't do nothing, what is Donald Trump undoing? He went after the Affordable Care Act. He went after police reform. He went after ending long, unfair sentences for people that have been given unfair sentences for nonviolent drug offenses. He went after what he had done for the environment. He went after every achievement in the last 8 years. His platform was that we're going to bring it back to the good old days. Make America great again.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is what he ran on and won on, and that's how he's governed. The question is, do we know where we are in history and what our roles are? You cannot achieve a title that you're not willing to do the function.
Well.
I tell people in churches all the time that having church titles with no function is absolutely hypocritical. Got too many ministers that don't minister to nobody. Have too many missionaries with no missions. Have too many trustees that can't be trusted. Just titles with no function. Ultimately, you will not be judged by your title, you'll be judged by your function.
Yeah.
So many of us are impressed with our county title, not knowing there are folks that preceded you and that will succeed you.
That's right.
You will be defined by what you do in your title. And your title and your deeds must correspond with the time and era in which you serve.
Yes.
3 weeks ago, Brother McMorris and I and others were in Memphis dealing with the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King being assassinated. And I was talking to some young people in National Action Network, and their question was, well, who did what 50 years ago? People are not interested in what kind of car you had 50 years ago. It don't run no more. People are not interested in your clothes. They're out of style. They're not interested in what house you had. It's an old house, and the way gentrification is going, it may not even be your family's house no more. They want to know when Dr. King was doing this or when Malcolm was doing that, where were you? If you go to a family reunion, you ask your older uncles and aunts and grandma, where were you in the 60s? Well, one day, they are going to ask you as a county executive, in the age of Trump, what did you do? Well, you know, I was so-and-so, and I had a budget of so-and-so, and all that ain't gonna matter. Just a few years from now. Some of it ain't gonna matter for y'all on election day. What will matter is what you did with your position, not that you were in position. I can tell you that one of the most difficult tasks that a black preacher has. Commissioner Brooks said I started preaching when I was 4, so I've been preaching a long time. And I can tell you one of the most difficult tasks a black preacher has is to preach the funeral of an irrelevant Negro. I mean, that's a hard job. They roll the body down the aisle, lay it out in front of the altar, families sitting up on the front row crying, and we supposed to get up and hallucinate a life for you never lived. I mean, most folks shouldn't even have a funeral. Most folks should go right from the morgue to the cemetery. Because most folk haven't done anything for anybody but them. So my first point is that if you're in office for your career, nobody cares about your career but you. And when you go, I even stopped doing funerals unless it's somebody that really meant something. I remember I did the eulogy at Michael Jackson's funeral. We was coming out the cemetery that night. Very well-known artist. If I called his name, you would know it. Stopped me and said, Reverend Al? I said, yeah. He said, I was really moved by your eulogy. I said, thank you. He said, no, it really moved me. I said, well, thank you. He said, if I go first, I want you to do a eulogy for me just like that. I said, well, you're going to have to give me something to work with. The fact that you have a big name or a big title does not mean anything if you don't use that title and name to do something for others in this era. And you are in the era of backlash. If you are not willing to put your shoulder to the grind and deal with that, then you should not take the title in these times. Those that have been put in position, first of all, don't forget you're in position because people with no title fought to open the door for you to get there. Don't ever get so impressed with yourself that you forget that there were those that paid a price so that you could be where you are. And why did they pay the price? They paid the price expecting that if they could just get the door cracked and get some of us through, that you would go in that door and help the rest of us. I always tell the story about I was debating a self-described black conservative, and he was telling me, Rev Al, I'm not into all that marching and protesting y'all do. I'm not into all of that. He says, I didn't make it protesting. I didn't make it marching. He says, look at my resume, my credentials. Read my resume. Marching didn't make my resume, didn't write my resume. I went to the right schools. I won the right awards. I'm a member of the right fraternities. I had the right connections. Read my resume. And I took it and I read it. I said, it's a very impressive resume. And you're right. Marching didn't write your resume. But marching made somebody read your resume. You ain't the first qualified Negro in America. There were folks that were qualified and gifted and talented before you, but they didn't have the options you had. And don't ever forget, some unlettered, uneducated, some illiterate grandmas when laid down in the gutter in Birmingham and Selma and faced biting dogs so you could go to those schools and join those fraternities. So what would make people that had nothing lay down and spend cold nights in jail? Some of them even die. Their only hope was that if they could break through and get you through, that you would get in these municipal positions and fight for us. Otherwise, they could have went and lived their life. That was their only hope. And for you to take the bloodshed and sweat and sacrifice of others and act like it was all for your self-aggrandizement is an unpardonable sin. Now, I'm not saying don't enjoy yourself, don't take your bows, don't do whatever is your little picadillos, but make sure you understand your function must also serve more than that. And understand that there is expectations of you because you are the result of struggle. So here we are today in the era of Trump. I have three concerns. One is they are trying to roll back voting rights. These laws